This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
Yes, let's get on with this thing. Hey, Bob, my tea is done. Proceed with the reading.
I see recording in your future. On Tuesday evenings at 8:45 Eastern, you'll record the Misdirected Mark podcast as far as the eye can see.
Oh, my God. Kind of softballed that one, didn't you?
Hey, I was just reading the tea leaves in his cup, man.
So is it all that it said about my future then?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nah, give me that thing. Let me see that. Oh, jeez. Look at this. I see that you'll be visited by 3 ghosts of podcast past, present, and future.
Scrooge?
That's where you're going?
Really?
I saw 3 separate tea clumps, and one of them looked like they had chains.
I saw 3 microphones and a mixer.
And with that, this is the 289th episode of the Misdirected Mark podcast. And tonight we're talking about reading the tea leaves in games that have interpretive mechanics. And with that, my name is Chris.
As always, I'm Phil.
And I'm Old Man Logan.
Oh, and with that, let's just get right into it. Bob, buddy old pal, what is going on?
Oh, Last Jedi. Twice.
Twice. I'm rocking the Star Wars. I'm rocking the Star Wars T-shirt.
I'm wearing a pink shirt because pink shirts are awesome.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, saw Last Jedi Thursday and Sunday. Love this movie. Very happy with it. I'm getting used to the bald head, rubbing the tennis ball, and I'm going through a little Minecraft withdrawal because the shared server that my buddy Bongo from work had that we play on, he had a hardware failure and it's down right now. He just got a brand new motherboard. So he's got to put that together over the next couple of days.
What's the SLA to bring the system back online?
Yeah, exactly. We don't have one of those.
I feel like you should talk to Bongo about the SLA for this hosting.
We should have an SLA,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the short version. And again, somehow it got to be Tuesday again, which these weeks are just whipping by.
Uh-huh.
Whipping.
Whipping?
Whipping.
Why are you putting so much emphasis on the whole whip?
Whips.
So far, we've had chains,
and
whips.
This
is my kind of episode.
I know, right?
Yeah. Phil, man, what's going on with you?
So on Saturday, I had this lovely date. I went out to dinner and out for some jazz.
Mm-hmm. It was a thing.
It was pretty good. I mean, I thought I might get to first base, but Chris said no on the ride home. So.
I mean, I just don't kiss and tell. That's all.
Right. No hands. No handsy stuff. No. Anyway, Chris and I actually went out to and Chris will talk about it in more detail, but we went out to Dinosaur Barbecue and then we caught this jazz show, which was really badass. And I'll leave that for Chris to talk about. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a good night out. The weather was a little meh. It was icy and shit. We were.
Phil almost fell. I can't really walk super effectively, so it was kind of hard to walk around.
Yeah, we were trucking around. Downtown was just really super icy. But anyway, cool time. I also saw Last Jedi twice, and loved it. Of course, it's way too early, and we're not talking about the movie at all.
Yep, no spoilers.
No spoilers. So don't panic. Don't turn off the podcast. But I will say that I am in the camp of really loved that movie. Got a lot out of it. Enjoyed it actually more the second time.
Me too.
Me too.
I'm now calling that the Guardians effect because Guardians 2 was a movie that I saw the first time and I was like, oh, that's really good. And then I went back and watched Guardians 2 a second time and I was like, oh, this movie's really good. Actually, everything about Guardians 2 actually gets better. The soundtrack winds up being even better.
Because it's more important.
Yeah, the soundtracks. Yeah, I think. Yes, actually, that's the thing. The soundtrack is way more tied into the movie. Anyway, that.
The plot of the movie is one of the songs.
Yes, it is, which is also brilliant. Did that. I finished Voltron season 4. Yes. Finally. Those last couple episodes. There's one episode in there that was okay, but it was for me it was a little more filler. The Voltron show, the show one.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, that was a little.
There's a little more. There was, which is okay. That show has serious beats and light beats.
Except it plays a role because what it does is it unites the galaxy.
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
which matters. Strange enough, while that's a filler episode, what it does is really important for the last episode.
Yeah, they don't waste. I mean, here's the thing: they don't waste those episodes, right? Like, the tone of that episode was lighter, was a light one, but you're right. The story contribution piece of it actually was important.
Everything in that show's done for a reason.
And the last episode is great. That sixth
is.
one, and there's that nice twist at the end.
It's a very nice twist.
Yeah, that was good. I was digging that, so I'm glad I finished it. I have been talked into, and not talked into difficult, like hard, but I'm going to start watching Cowboy Bebop.
Yay.
Yay, because I had never watched it before.
So you and I think I might watch it too, and maybe some other hosts of Misdirected Mark will watch it, and maybe we'll get together and talk about it a little bit.
Because here's what happened: I finished it, and what I found is I like having a 30-minute show on my Netflix or Hulu list, because if I'm at work, I can watch one while I'm eating lunch,
there you go.
or on the weekends, like because I still like to get a lot of stuff done on the weekends, but like I can watch one while I'm eating breakfast, something like that. So when I finished up,
and Bebop's on Hulu right now. Right?
Yeah, Bebop's on Hulu. So when I finished up Voltron, I was like, oh, like I don't have a 30-minute show. And so I went to Senda and I was like, what should I watch? And then she went through a bunch of them, and she went through a bunch of ones that weren't available on streaming. And finally she found Cowboy Bebop. And then I think she talked to you about it. And then it was like,
then we were talking about animes that you should potentially watch.
That list is long.
I will make you happy, and I will start watching Cowboy Bebop.
Oh man, that's the problem. Bob's going to binge the whole thing on one night
No,
shift.
I won't, because I have so many other things that I need to
everyone.
binge.
So here's the thing that we're all going to do. So Cowboy Bebop, I think it's 24 episodes long. It is episodic for sure. Like,
Okay.
you can really just watch one-offs here and there. Like, there is sort of a meta plot story thing going on.
Yeah.
And if you've watched it all once and you understand what it is, then it makes a lot more sense.
So the whole thing's just 24 episodes?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Oh, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody out there, especially hosts of Misdirected Mark Productions, watch Cowboy Bebop, and maybe we'll do some episodes. We'll get together for some bonus episodes for patrons. And
Sweet.
and talk about
I'll nerd out
Cowboy
about
Bebop
that.
as story, as how to apply it to role-playing games.
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, the last thing I did before I kick it over to you, I actually got back into doing some Hydra Hacker stuff. The last couple of weeks, the month of November was kind of a mess, and I didn't really get anything done on Hydra Hackers. But I finally settled back in and started working on some of the feedback from Metatopia and folding that in. And I think we're still talking about it, although I think we kind of agreed. You guys are going to play Hydra Hackers.
We are. We're going to play Hydra Hackers. I'm very excited.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy that you guys didn't play all the early versions. Like, I really am happy that you guys are going to see something closer to the final. Like, it's not completely done, and obviously once we all start playtesting it, there may be some other changes, but I'm kind of really happy that I'm bringing it to you, like, more together and less like, hey, this thing's all stuck together with duct tape. Because I actually want to play a game with you guys, and now I'm like actually excited to like do it. Like, come play Hydra Hackers. So it'd be exciting. It also means I'm going to run a shit ton of stuff in 2018 because I have a DCC group. I have my Sunday night group where I'm running Tales from the Loop, and then I'll also be running Hydra Hackers
On the other Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a be busy guy. I'm okay with it though. Like it's good, and running Hydra Hackers is still actually working.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's legit. How about you, man? Tell everyone about our jazz date.
Well, do you mind if I just go through my week?
You can go through your whole
All right.
week.
So Wednesday I played Dresden, and then I watched the Force Awakens to get ready for Last Jedi.
Oh, good. I did the same thing.
Thursday was The Last Jedi, first time, and I also watched some episodes of Felicity, as recommended by a friend. I was pushed to watch that, so I watched a few episodes of that. That show is not as good as I thought it would be. Unfortunately, it's like a college romance story, coming of age story
Yeah, I mean, it's
about love and life in New York City.
it's so very 90s.
It is like the most 90s show ever.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to give it a few more episodes, but it's not nearly as good as Scandal.
Wow, I mean, Scandal's, Scandal's kind of nutty, but Felicity, yeah, I mean, yes, you are correct.
Friday I was broken and stuck at home. Saturday I watched a bunch of Scandal and this show called Big Mouth, which Big Mouth is a cartoon on Netflix that is about prepubescent teenagers coming of age. It's hilarious. It's like a comedy. It's an animated comedy. Oh my god, it's so funny. Like it is there's a character in there that is oh my god, you got to look this up, Phil. This show, you would get a kick out of it. The like the hormone monster. Like it comes and talks. It, like only the one character can see it, but it basically tells him like to jerk off and masturbate and like all different ways to do it. It's very very vile and hilarious at the same time. If you didn't know, we're explicit. You've been warned. Then I went out to dinner with Phil. We went to Dinosaur Barbecue. It was a really good time. We had a very nice conversation. They stuck us right in the corner.
Cute little cozy table.
It was wonderful. And then we go to Hallwells, which is this church that has been renovated into an arts center. So we go into the place. We ask where the show is. They're like downstairs. We walk down the stairs into the basement of this church, and Phil's like, well, this is about the right place for a jazz show to be. We open the door to where the show is, and it's like a small little theater.
Yeah. Like theater seats.
Theater seats.
Tiny.
Very tiny.
Yep.
Like 100 seats in this place, maybe.
And I will say this, that all of my experiences seeing live jazz have always been in really small venues. So I'm like really predisposed. Like I like jazz in really small venues.
Yeah, me too.
And this was perfect.
So yeah, I mean, we sit like 15, not even like 10 rows from this where the performers will be, which is not a stage. It's just it like goes down into where the performers are.
It's just the front of the room.
Yeah, the front of the room. And Scott Tixier, who is a jazz violinist, he was born in France. He came over to New York, and that's where he lives and plays from. And then the Walter Kemp Trio, which is an amazingly good studio and touring trio, bass, drums, and piano. They come out and they start playing, and Scott Tixier is one of the finest musicians, probably the 5 or 6 finest musicians I've ever heard play live. And I've heard some pretty amazing people play live. Like I've heard Pat Metheny play live. I've heard, I always forget the guy who wrote Take 5, the piano player who's killing me that I can't remember his name. I always remember it later. But yeah, I mean, I've heard some pretty amazing players in my life, and he was one of the best I've ever heard.
Oh, I mean, it was amazing.
There was a particular tune that he played where, I mean, I never heard sounds like this come out of a violin before. And I've heard a fair amount of different violin players. Like, if people are familiar with Lindsey Sterling, like, you know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you know what a violin can sort of do that is not just necessarily classical music.
Take 5, you said?
Yeah, Take 5.
Dave Brubeck?
Thank you. I saw Dave Brubeck live at the Trough. So.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah, like, that was an amazing show, too. Tixier, this one tune, he starts playing, like, rhythm guitar, basically, on his violin, and then he's got a looper. And if nobody knows what a looper is, like, it will record what he's playing and then just keep looping it. And then he does it with another, like, backbeat type thing, and then he does it with a harmony, and then he does it with, like, a supporting melody, and then he starts soloing over the top of it.
Right.
And then about 3 minutes into that, like, setting that up and then playing over that, he stops the loop and the band jumps in playing exactly
without missing a beat.
Without missing a beat.
Oh, it was
playing
so
exactly
good.
what he had looped together. It was
Right.
so good. It was such a good tune.
The thing I remember, I mean, because the music was insane, but you and I talked about this on the drive home, was there's a whole show's worth of everything you need to know about being a player in a role-playing game, you can learn from watching live jazz.
Uh-huh.
Like, there was, and I've had this thought for a long time, but every time I see live jazz, it reinforces this thing about how collaboration, communication, fun, like how all those things interplay.
Yeah, they watch each other. They're always looking at each other, always listening really hard to each other. They're having a good time up there.
They make spaces for each other.
Physically make spaces for each other.
Physically and musically make spaces for each other. And they're just like, they were having a great time. So was everyone in the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Walter Kemp Trio is from around here, so.
They were funny guys.
Yeah, they're funny.
Yeah. And great musicians.
Yeah, I mean, holy Lord.
That one song that Walter, who was the pianist, did about the person who died.
Dedicated to the person, it was a pastor.
Yeah.
Who passed away.
Oof, that piece was also like, that piece was incredible. Mm-hmm. It was really.
I really liked the piece that the bass player wrote. It was called Water.
Yeah.
It was a very
Water.
Water.
Because
water.
Scott with his French accent couldn't say it clear enough.
He like you could tell that they could play a bunch of different styles. Like they played some free jazz, they played some bebop, they played some very avant-garde type stuff. They played some stuff that was inspired by French music. Mm-hmm. They played stuff that was inspired by rhythm and blues.
Yep.
And it was so good.
By the way, if I haven't said this yet, the next time a jazz show comes around to Hallwells, I'm in. just
Okay.
tell me I'm in. Like I'll totally.
should
I'm in two.
Yeah, you should come to like if I ever find a good one to go to the Pausa Art House. Which
Yeah.
Pausa Art House is another place in jazz. It is a place in Buffalo that has live jazz.
Is it small?
Yes, it's small.
Okay.
We should go there, and it's like a tapas bar too. So
Oh, that's cool.
it's a really good venue.
Tapas.
I heard topless.
No,
and
no,
then-
not topless. Tapas. The
And then
Tapas.
after I
It's
heard it, I
small.
went, no,
Tapas,
he's talking
tapas.
tapas.
yeah, the small
Yeah.
the small hors d'oeuvre things. Yeah,
So
it's different otherwise. If
so Sunday was dinner with you guys and then the other rest of the gaming group, and then we went and saw The Last Jedi again.
uh-huh.
And my contract ended at my job, so Monday was back to being a freelancer and recording Down with D&D with Lisa Chen, the newest AL admin. So that'll be out next week, Monday.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to the whole writing as many words as I can a day. So I'm on like this 3,000 word a day. kick,
Right, word monkey.
which is going pretty okay so far.
By the way, while you were talking, I looked up this big mouth thing.
Yeah.
How have I not watched the show yet?
It's pretty new still, okay? So, I mean, I'm just saying, like, you should watch at least the first episode or two.
The first episode is entitled Ejaculation.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, that tells you all you need to know right there, I guess.
Episode 3, Am I Gay?
Yep, that was a good episode.
Episode 5, Girls Are Horny Too.
Haven't gotten there yet.
Yep. They're great. They 7, A Requiem for a Wet Dream.
Nice. That's
All right.
funny.
I'm in.
All right, let's do some announcements real quick. So, when people hear this in podcast land, not in the chat room tonight, folks, but when people hear this in podcast land, because this will be out next week Tuesday, Love and Justice will be out.
Dun dun dun.
For all of you.
I'm doing all the work tomorrow night to put it up on drive-through and get it ready.
Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can get your copy of Love and Justice. You know, I feel like we should put like a donation button or something like that on the website, like because Sunday designed this game and like we can't charge for it, but we can be like, if you really like what Sunday's doing, you can donate a few bucks.
I don't know a mechanism for it, and we have to very carefully skirt around making any profit on it because it was because of the Creative Commons license.
It's true. It's true, but we're not selling it. Then we're not taking money for the product.
No, you could always patron. You could always patron the network.
You could patron the network too if you really
could,
enjoy what
yes.
Sunday's
You
doing.
could you could certainly patron the network.
There's a way to give her money also.
That is a very nice indirect way. And since Patreon has seen the errors of its ways and has decided not to implode, we can all just take a deep breath and go back to normal and back our artists that we love so much.
And can I say thank you to all you patrons out there, because in the craziness of Patreon, a lot of people lost a lot of patrons and a lot of money.
Not us.
We
Not a
went
lot.
from 95 to 91. We went from $363 to $351. That is an acceptable amount of loss.
Yeah,
in my
like
opinion.
that, we understand. And I think we actually didn't we gain a couple of people back afterwards or something?
Yes, we did, and people
Yeah.
shifted their pledges up and whatnot. Unfortunately, I changed all the levels to account for what happened, and
Right.
that knocked everybody off of the levels that they had signed up for previously.
Right.
So, folks, you really need to go back and pick the level that you want to be at. Also, the misdirected mark and the down with D&D levels are cheaper, like than they were before. They're only $4.50 now instead of $5.
Yes. So yeah, first of all, thank you Patreon for seeing the errors of your ways. I'll later in the after show mention that this was probably a completely avoidable problem. There's some good business they could have done in terms of a survey and some data mining that would have caused a lot less turmoil. But I will say this for them. They certainly read the writing on the wall or on Twitter and acted, I think, fairly quickly and staunched the wound. I mean, they left some people with, less patrons, but, they got on there quick enough and, revoked everything.
Yeah, because there was a max exodus. Also, somebody did some really good math about what happens to the lower level people who patron creators.
Yeah, you just get crushed.
Well, the whole concept was that patrons creators get more money, but it's actually not true if you take in the fees.
Right.
So, like the $1 patrons of different places, if you actually just take the entire amount of money that was being patroned plus and you include the fees, the creators were actually only getting like 59 or 60% of the money that was being paid out. So it was actually a lot less than what creators were getting paid before. So once somebody did that math and showed it, like Patreon was like, oh, well, we screwed up and we didn't get bought through with what we were trying to do.
I mean, the other thing that was actually, the other thing that was really a problem was if you are a patron of multiple, the fact that they weren't going to bundle the charges and charge you individually for
so
everyone.
then you get slammed with that 35-cent fee
everything
Every
you
single one.
patron.
It's actually why I canceled a bunch of my pledges too. Like I'm like I really did it not because I didn't want to support the people that I was creating, but I wanted Patreon to not do what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, I know what. We can talk about it in the F show. I mean, I know what the problem was with transactional fees with from online, like from PayPal and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's some like really avoidable things they could have done from a business standpoint that I think would have made it less disastrous.
Yeah, I was patroning a bunch of places at $1. Like
Sure.
I had like 7 places that I was patroning for $1.
That's
Yeah.
a very common thing. A lot of people at
Well,
at the
and
$1
then
mark
it's going
all-
to be like $1.35 per each one.
No,
Like
$1.30. It was like $1.39.
yeah, and like
Or
that,
37.
like you'll feel that. Like it may not ultimately seem like a lot of money, but this is like the psychology of like apps, right? Like the worst. Some people say the worst thing that Apple ever did was offer a free app
Yeah,
on the
because-
website because it makes a $4.99 app
Look bad.
look like it's expensive.
Uh-huh.
But $4.99 is like a Starbucks coffee, right? Like people don't flinch.
Yeah.
But I sit and hem and
Fancy
haw like,
coffee.
should I get Catan for my, am I going to play it enough for $4.99?
It's funny because I don't even think about that for apps for board games because I know how much they actually cost in reality.
Yeah,
Like
I know.
like Catan
Like
costs-
$4.99 is a steal for the board game.
Yeah, I have a Agricola. Like it cost me $6 instead of $7.
Terra Mystica is on
Oh, is it?
iPad. Yeah, for $9.99. Terra Mystica is
that.
like a $90 game.
Yeah, I know. I'll have to think about getting Terra Mystica.
Yeah.
Next
That's
thing-
actually probably the best place to play
that was
Terra
a,
Mystica.
That was a weird conversation that we just had about Patreon in the middle of the. We didn't even plan on, but okay, that's fine.
how this show works, right?
Another announcement. So we are looking for interns who want to edit audio, and I'll be happy to trade some mentoring for that assistance. We are also looking to expand the network a teeny tiny bit. So if people have podcasts that they want to pitch, we're interested in hearing about podcasts that you might want to pitch.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, like right now, I don't really have any announcements to make, but our lounge is looking to become a actual show,
Oh, okay.
and we might have a host for that already.
Oh, well,
I'm
that'd
already
be
in
nice.
talks with that person.
That'd be
So
nice.
I'm looking to have that be a bi-weekly or every 3 weeks show for Misdirected Mark Productions.
Yeah. I mean, I've always enjoyed the lounge, and
Mm-hmm.
having a lounge host would be pretty cool.
Yeah, but I mean, we're looking for pitches. We're being very picky about what we take, like because of Misdirected Mark's pivot, and I hear that Panda's Talking Games might be pivoting a little bit in the future.
I don't know. I mean, so that no one panics, I have to start writing in earnest for Hydra Hackers. So we may do some more
Design
off
type
the cuff.
stuff, right?
Well, no, we may do some more off the cuff improv episodes instead of the more structured
Yeah.
written episodes. But it'll just be because I need the time to be writing. I think the format's going to stay the same. It just might be a little bit more like the earlier days of Pandas when Sen and I just kind of got on the mics and rambled and went back and forth. So we'll talk about it on Pandas more, but I have to, for 2018, get ready to do some serious ass writing.
Yeah, I know, to get it all
I got a
together.
game to finish.
So that's a thing. If you're looking for ideas of types of shows to pitch, we are very interested in specific types of games.
Yeah.
Like if you think of Cypher Speak or Down with D&D, something like that for a specific game line or game
Right, we got
company.
those already.
Yeah, we already got those, but that's
Right.
the example that I'm looking for.
But don't come to us with your Rune Quest.
Yeah,
We're looking.
we prefer relevant things.
Yeah. And the other thing is that, listen, the last guys we let into the network, and just, this is what you're up against. Like, go look at those the Jianghu Hustle guys.
Go
'Cause-
listen to Zhang Yu Hustle.
right, like, that's what we're looking for.
Uh-huh.
Like, that's Misdirected Mark. That's a Misdirected Mark quality
Yep, that
show.
Cypher Speak,
Uh-huh.
that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Down with D&D because we really hammer on what makes D&D D&D.
Can I just tell you how fortunate I feel that, like, I'm really proud the fact that our martial arts episode was so bad that that they had to go and make a whole show as a rebuttal to it.
Yeah.
It's a great show.
It is a great show.
I love listening to that
You have
show.
to look at it this way, Phil. It wasn't so terrible that they had to come up with a rebuttal. We inspired them to come up with a brilliant show.
No, man, it was not one of our best episodes.
No, I
Like,
don't
No,
believe-
it wasn't, but
I mean, it was that episode. Like, they're showing you exactly how hard that topic is.
oh
yeah.
yeah.
And how deep it is.
And how deep it is, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, their Crouching Tiger episode is phenomenal. All their episodes are good. I'm just listening to the Crouching Tiger one. It's really good. I think I'm like one episode behind right now, but still excellent. Anyway, that's kind of what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, bring out the big guns.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next thing. Nope.
Access granted.
I almost hit the wrong button.
Ooh, thank God, because I don't have a drink here. I can't.
I can't go to
Thank
the
God
bar.
the garage has a much gentler opening. Oh,
Well, no, I almost hit the bar bumper.
that had just been awkward.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So tonight we are going to get settled in the garage and talk about a mechanic that we call reading the tea leaves. We've talked about this mechanic in passing on several different episodes, but we have not taken it apart here in the garage. The name reading the tea leaves is from tessography, which is the practice of telling someone's fortune by reading from a splotched or smeared substance. Think of the divination class in Harry Potter.
The grim.
The grim. So tonight, let's get into what makes up reading the tea leaves. Phil, what is this in games?
No, man. There's, by the way, if you want to watch the evolution of this discussion, if you are, go to our G Plus community because you can see where I asked this initial question. But it also spilled over into the Slack room for life. Like there was a point where this conversation was happening in two different places, and I will thank Rob Abrazato who bridged both of those because I was unable to keep up with both parallel discussions. But it's what you call it. It was a good discussion because it took a little while to actually get to what is the reading the tea leaves. It was good because Rob actually asked me to define it, so it actually went to some effort to get there. So, what is this thing? So this mechanic is a type of fortune mechanic, right? So we previously, a couple episodes ago, talked about fortune in the middle, fortune at the end kind of thing. This is a type of fortune mechanic, and it is often a fortune at the end mechanic because it's kind of a thing that you do, like it's the thing you do and then like you resolve it and go back into play. It is characterized by the use of numbers, symbols, colors, or some combination of all of those to determine the outcome of a given check. And often we're taking advantage of multi-dimensional information. So we haven't talked about this in a while, right? We haven't talked about like the use of like multi-dimensional dice and things like that. But what we mean by multi-dimension, we don't mean like it extends into like the fourth dimension or anything like that. What we mean is that the roll conveys more than one set of information.
Sure.
Okay. So in this case, our randomizer, and we'll talk about some different types of randomizers, our randomizers presenting more than one unit of information in a given check.
Yeah, but there's another thing. The randomizer that you're talking about could also be abstract instead of just giving that one unit of information. That means that the randomizer is providing some kind of symbol that needs to be interpreted, or even a picture.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens in this mechanic is that the randomizer generates the information, and then the GM and or the players interpret it to determine the outcome of the check. Okay, and this is actually the crux of what makes this mechanic different. Is that it's after the roll, you have to kind of look over the information the randomizer's given you, and make decisions and about how to resolve the check. And that's the reading the tea leaves part, right? Because that's what we're talking about. Like in actual reading the tea leaves, like you drink the tea and then you look at the bottom of the cup and you're looking for symbols and patterns and stuff like that. And on some level with this kind of mechanic, you're looking at a set of symbols, colors, numbers, or whatever, and you're now having to kind of put together what this is going to mean for the continuation of the story.
Absolutely. Now, if the randomizer is just giving us one value to determine the outcome, then it doesn't really fall into this concept that we're talking about. So, for example, in a D20 game, the action mechanic, a D20 versus DC, is not a tea leaves type of mechanic. I mean, you roll the D20 and compare the final result to the DC. There's not really any interpretation that needs to be done there. There's just sort of a binary outcome.
Yeah, I mean, like you either, especially for D&D, because you're either over or not. It doesn't actually matter how much you're over. It doesn't matter how much you missed it by. Just yes, no. It generates binary information.
Sometimes, if you want to really get the wiggle room out in there, when there is failure in some way, shape, or form, the game master or dungeon master can interpret how failure works, especially on skill checks. But it is very, very codified when it comes to attack rolls and such.
Yeah, I mean, you missed.
Yep.
Yeah. So it may help us as we kind of dig into this topic, especially in the first half of this segment, to now just talk about some games that use this type of mechanic.
Sure. So the Star Wars Fantasy Flight game, or now the system underlying it called Genesis, these use custom dice. In fact, there are 7 different
7 different dice.
dice types. Because there's not 7 different. Oh yeah, there are 7 different dice. Never
There are
mind,
7
you're right.
different dice.
There are D6s, D8s, and D12s, but there are different colors that do different things. So like, there's ability dice, there's proficiency dice, there's difficulty dice, there's challenge dice, there's boost dice, there's setback dice, there's force dice. Now, like the ability and the challenge dice are D8s. The proficiency and the ability and the difficulty dice are D8s. The proficiency and the challenge dice are D12s. The boost, the setback, and the force dice are all D6s.
I'm gonna trust you. I thought the
pretty
6 was. I thought the force die was a 12, but
Oh no, the force die is a 12. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's correct. It's been a while since
Yeah.
I've played with those dice. And then they have 6 different symbols distributed over those dice. Well, it's weird because the force die doesn't have those symbols. They have a different set of symbols.
does it? Okay, so
Yeah.
there's 7 different symbols.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, the force die symbols are either black or white.
Okay, for which
light
side, yeah.
dark side.
The other dice, then the other 6 dice have 6 different symbols.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is success, triumph, advantage, failure, despair, and threat. Which success and failure are whether you succeed or fail.
Triumphs are like super successes.
They're like crits.
Yep.
And despairs are like critical failures.
Yep.
Advantage and threat are the interpretive parts of this game.
Uh-huh.
So advantage is like something good will happen, and threat is like something bad will happen.
Yes.
That is not necessarily a failure or a success, but will be something that adds on to the story.
Exactly. Okay, so another game that's like this is Warhammer Fantasy III Edition, which actually isn't a surprise because it's the Fantasy Flight game that actually came before Star Wars, and it was in some ways kind of the testing grounds for this style by Fantasy Flight.
So Everway, a game that I didn't really know existed until I read these show notes.
Oh
I
yeah,
had to go look it up.
I played it once.
Well-
I played it once in Gen Con '96.
Yeah, I went and looked it up. So, to decide what happens, the GM considers the rules of karma, a character's statistics and power, drama, the needs of the plot, and fortune, which is the result of a card drawn from the fortune deck, which then you interpret.
Yeah, and these and the fortune, those cards are just like paintings.
Yes, they're just paintings.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're just basically using that as inspiration to figure out what happens based on drama and karma.
Yeah.
Tell me about Tales from the Loop.
Yeah, so Tales from the Loop is a little bit of a tea leaves mechanic. So it uses a pool of D6s for actions, and 6s are successes. Now, when you roll, most challenges, not all, but most challenges only require you a 1/6 to pass. And if you get more than 1/6, you can buy effects, which then have mechanical and narrative components. So there's actually a moment when you roll where you first set aside the first 6, right? You're like, okay, I succeeded. And then you're like, I have 2 more successes. Let me go look at the chart. Let me see what I can pick for those. This is how I want to narrate them into the story, or this is the questions I want to ask you, GM, that kind of thing. So, and then the culmination of all that then comes out as, the narrative that continues on in the story.
Next game?
Sure.
Paranoia, the latest version, the most recent version. So this uses a pool of dice, one of which is the computer die. So if the computer die comes up with a computer symbol, then the computer narratively interjects into the scene. And it's really on the game master to decide what the computer is going to do. Like, they can do anything they want in a lot of ways.
I mean, the computer can have a personal conversation with you and ask how you're doing.
And I've actually seen a lot of this happen because for some fucking reason, when we played Paranoia, I rolled like 7 computers. So me and Garrett had many times where I had to interact with the computer.
It's a 6-sided die, and it's the 6, right? So
Yeah.
there's a 1 in 6 chance every time the dice hit the table, the
Dude,
computer's going to show up.
I think I rolled the dice in the session 21 times.
Statistically higher than the norm.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was. Everyone was like, "Oh my god! Well, how come you keep rolling the computer, Chris?" But it happened. It was
'Cause it's
fine.
funny?
It was funny.
Right. Roger, could you have taken your hand out of those handcuffs at any time?
No.
Only when it was funny. Yep.
So Phil, now that we've reviewed some examples of games, you want to do it? Blah blah blah. No, misdirected. Mark. Word scramble.
Sorry, I was reading the chat.
I know you were reading the chat room. I was looking right at your bald ass head and watching you not pay attention to me as it was looking down at the screen. So Phil, now that we've reviewed some examples of games, break down what is going on with the mechanic. But you must wait for me to do the.
Okay, let's break it down. So we're playing the game, and we reach a spot in the game where there is a need for a check.
Okay.
Okay. What game you play will determine the need for that check.
Accurate.
The player will determine what they need to roll/draw. Right? They'll need to determine what the randomizer is going to be.
Well, they will roll or draw the dice. Roll the dice or draw a card.
Yeah, but I mean, like, so for instance, if we'll do Star Wars in a second as an example.
Yeah,
okay, but anyway, you have to put that together, right? So number of dice, your bonuses, all that. Then you engage the randomizer.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay, then based on what comes up in the randomizer, we're going to interpret the results. Some of those results are going to be applied mechanically,
Correct.
and some of those results are going to be applied narratively.
Yes, unless the game is just all about narrative application.
Yeah, exactly.
So the results will either be applied mechanically, narratively, or both.
Exactly.
All right. So let's do that with Star Wars Fantasy Flight Games example. A check is called for in the narrative of the game. Let's actually do an example. Why not?
Okay.
So, no, I can't use an example from that movie.
No. Good Lord,
So
Chris.
Leia and Luke are running away from a bunch of stormtroopers in the Death Star, and they come through the door, and they need to get across the canyon area of the
So
Death
you got to
Star.
throw the grappling
Yep,
hook.
yep, yep. So you would gather a combination of dice based on your skill situation, etc. So Luke is like, I'm gonna grab you, Leia, and swing you over. So that's one of those difficulty dice, the black dice.
Oh, sure, because he's carrying
D6s.
somebody.
The game master, I'll set the challenge at like a 2.
Okay.
So we'll put 2 of those dice, the purple dice, into the pool. Then I'm like, Luke's pretty deft and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm pretty hardy, right? Like I work on a moisture farm.
Yeah.
That's hard work, isn't it?
But
I would imagine he gets something for having the equipment of the actual dental floss. on
Oh,
his
yeah,
yes, that would be
Stormtrooper belt.
one of the light blue purple dice, which is a
Yep.
boost die.
Yep.
And we'll say that Luke, he probably gets 3 of the ability dice. Those are the
Okay.
green ones.
Yep.
We'll even say he probably has some sort of ability, like some sort of skill that lets him turn one of his green dice, that's the ability die, into the proficiency die.
Oh, the yellow die.
So then he'll put the yellow die in there.
Okay. Then we're going to roll that mess.
Yeah, we're going to roll that mess. And then we're going to cancel out symbols, successes and failures.
Right.
So whatever they are. And we'll say that he doesn't succeed, but...
He succeeds, right? Because they do swing across, but there's a threat
Yes.
because the door opens part way. Yeah.
That would be... And stormtroopers appear on the other side.
Right.
And because I was gonna say he fails, but instead of swinging and failing his swing, that plus the threats, I mean, he doesn't quite get all the stuff out and together fast enough, and then the door opens and the stormtroopers show up on the other side. So then they'd have to do another check. It seems like a reasonable way to do it. Like we set the stakes as like getting across. Really, it's getting across the way, right?
Yeah.
But we don't want Luke and Leia to fall into the pit. So
Yeah, we get nothing out of that.
Yeah, we get nothing out of that. So we'll say that Luke has a hard time getting the grappling hook together, and they're pinned down by stormtrooper fire from above, and the door's starting to open behind them.
There you go.
And then play continues because of the threat that has been assessed. So like there's like 4 threat. So then we start spending threat, right?
Yeah.
2 of the threat is like stormtroopers show up on the other side. Another 2 of the threat we decide is like the door starts opening from below, but it doesn't open all the way because it wasn't enough threat.
That's right. Right, because it's just exactly.
And that's just a narrative thing. Like then we're putting pressure on the characters.
Yeah. So that's that whole mechanism, right? Where after the dice are rolled, there's like, first there's the canceling of symbols, and then the remaining symbols, we're looking at the symbols and making a judgment about what do we do with these? Like, what does a threat look like, right? Like the door behind them lifts up part way, right? That's, and what does an advantage look like? And we have to, those have to be determined in the context of the scene that we're in. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so that's, I think that's a great example, right? Like that kind of sets it up. And I really think that Star Wars FFG is the best example of reading the tea leaves.
Definitely the most popular example that we have.
Yeah, I also think it's a really strong example because that pool of dice, right? Like a lot of shit is going on. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So Phil, why don't you tell me what play experience these kind of games create at the table?
Yeah, so these games often create additional narrative and narrative control based on the interpretation of the results when you roll the dice and determine what happens. And so deciding, like, for instance, for Star Wars FFG, deciding on what that advantage is, right? Like, what does one advantage look like in the scene? That's an opportunity to create additional narrative in the game.
Yeah.
And likewise, determining, if you're the GM in Paranoia, determining what the computer does when somebody rolls the computer die is a moment for additional narrative.
Absolutely.
And so these games, even if they're traditional in their approach, right? Because FFG's got a fairly kind of traditional swagger about it. They have a lot of story elements in them. They wind up having, this these story elements. They have this emergent play quality, right? There's a lot of emergent play that comes out in Star Wars FFG because as you interpret those advantages or those threats, shit can happen. Like, oh, that blaster bolt hit a pipe and toxic gas is now pouring into the room.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that wasn't anything the GM had prepped, but you're in the middle of a fight in, the engine room of a ship and somebody rolls a threat. Like, there's an emergent quality that appears.
By the way, anytime you want to put an advantage in a Star Wars game, if you have a droid NPC that's with you, you just have that droid NPC come up with something clever, or you have that droid NPC come up with something clever, or you have that droid NPC do something clever. That's what R2-D2 is basically. He's basically a rolling advantage person.
He's like an advantage sponge.
Yeah.
When you don't know what to do, just tap him with an advantage. Okay. So there's like this really interesting spectrum because games like Star Wars and Warhammer, like those are pretty, like, I don't want to say they're really traditional, but they're more on the traditional side. And Everway is like super story based. Like that's a real story, like that's a real story game, really abstract kind of thing. But both of them wind up having room for this emergent play quality inside of them because of this mechanic.
That's right. So these games often have more emergent play as the randomizer requires in-the-moment interpretations of what should happen. And these bits of narrative created can steer the game in unseen directions, which if you like emergent play, that can be a ton of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like, I think that's the thing that, I think it's probably what the draw of the Star Wars FFG dice mechanic is, right? The hitting and missing, like adding it, if all of the if the advantage and threat dice weren't in the game, I don't know how exciting, like rolling those dice and canceling things out to figure out if you were successful or not would actually be.
Yeah.
Right? It's the emergent dice, right? The advantage and disadvantage dice that keep altering the course of the scene with each roll.
Yeah.
And I think that's, that's a feature, not a bug, right? Like that is definitely, I think it's definitely design intent.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to the chat room now, right?
Yeah. And I'm going to apologize. I clobbered a little bit of your section. I was, reading and kind of freeforming, and I clobbered a little bit of the section
That's okay. My cousin called me in the middle of it, but I don't know why, so I had to hang up on her twice.
Yeah.
It distracted me, but
Is it Lizzie?
No, my cousin Julie.
Oh, okay.
So that was weird. So sorry everybody about that. I got a little
No,
confused.
cool. All right. Well, then I accidentally stole part of your bit at the correct time.
No, that's fine.
All right. So let's do it. Let's take a break. Let's check in with chat room, and then we're gonna continue on with more of a discussion about this mechanic.
But first thing, this fake ad from Mr. Hector Mark Productions. So if you wanted to advertise with Mr. Hector Mark Productions, this is a place where your ad would be, and we would do some amazing bespoke ad copy.
This is where we use our many hours of acting experience.
all like none of them.
Well, no, Chris is actually Chris has done the 48-hour
Film festival.
Film festival. That is Chris's acting chops.
Yep.
I in 8th grade.
Well, I've done some voice acting for different podcasts.
Nice. In 8th grade, I did some visual arts things in middle school.
And I have played a thespian.
Yes, in Action Movie World. So yeah, your ad is going to get the utmost quality in acting. It'll definitely not be quite as we initially wrote it.
Correct.
But we think we bring a folksy charm to the ads that we create.
And you can check our rates out on the website, misdirectedmark.com, where it's all the way on the right. Just click there, you'll get the PDF, you get to see what we charge.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a Kickstarter coming, if you've got a supplement that's coming out on drive-through, if you want us to talk about your podcast, I mean, hell, we'll do that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do all those things, man. We're cool.
All right, now before we get to the chat room, I'm going to talk about another show on Misdirected Mark Productions, Bone, Stone, and Obsidian. So Wayne Chang, the Palladian, and Robert Aducci take a monthly deep dive into the Dark Sun setting and discuss it across all editions of D&D. And I just found out that they are on a normalized recording schedule now, so the episodes will always be coming out on the fourth Thursday of every month.
Oh, fantastic. We like consistency.
Yep, they will be out in their own feed and on the Down with D&D feed. So what's going on in the chat room, Bob?
So a couple of things about the FFG Star Wars. Rob brought up the point that the dice actually have some blanks as well.
They do.
There's some blank faces in there,
There
which
are.
he thinks is an important feature.
It is. I do not understand the math of those dice. I never really tried to figure it out, though.
I'm sure there's math involved.
There is. There's a probability
There's
thing.
always math
yeah.
involved. And Avi the Jackal brought up a point saying one of the secret game design choices in FFG Star Wars is that success and advantage are slightly negatively correlated. This leads you to tend towards success with complication or failing forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is a very cool
Yeah,
point.
kind of neat. It's kind of neat actually how it does that for the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Anything else in the chat room?
I think we're good for now.
All right.
Sweet.
So where are we going next?
So, what we like to do in the second session of the garage is now actually talk about the mechanic in terms of how to best use it in your game, where it's going to cause problems, and then we just kind of wax about like different ways we either could use it, hack it, things we'd like to see it do, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, man. Let's talk about how to leverage this mechanic in play. So, reading the tea leaves is a skill, and you need to get proficient at it. And there are ways to get proficient at it. I mean, you might have a natural talent for it, but you can sharpen them up. And here are a few ways that you can actually do that. So, one, you can associate the situation with what's happening around you. You can practice this by doing word association exercises or asking yourself what would happen in your favorite movie if a certain scene started going a different way. So, I don't know. Let's do Star Wars again.
You're on board a cruiser, and you are having a fight in the cargo hold, and a blaster bolt goes astray and strikes a crate. What is in that crate that makes this a threat?
Oh, it's a baby crate dragon that starts going crazy.
Perfect.
Why not, right?
Yeah, why not?
Because it can go either way then. It's a threat to you, but it's also a threat to
They're
the
hauling
bad
raptors.
guys. Yeah, oh, there you go.
You're a dead man, Solo.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Understanding the genre, tropes, and story beats will make it easier to craft things that make sense within play of whatever game you're
I think we
playing.
just saw that happen,
Yep,
right?
absolutely. And also, lean into setbacks and failures to make situations worse because tough situations are more fun to get yourself out of.
Right, and there's a balancing act, right? Because there's fun tough, and then there's fuck you tough,
That's
right?
true.
So know the difference, right? Having the baby dragon pop out, that's a good, that's great. Having the raptor appear next to you, less great.
Yeah, when the crate dragon jumps out and eats the Imperial that's trying to shoot you.
Right.
You're like, yes, and then it looks at you and looks at you like it's hungry. Then you're like, no.
Right.
That's,
Run.
Yeah, that's fun. That's fun bad, I guess, or that's fun tough, I suppose, instead of shitty tough.
Yeah, I guess. I guess the point is, don't take the negative parts of those things as a hammer. It's a escalation. Yeah.
Anytime you can escalate, it's better.
Yeah.
What's another one?
Take advantage of those emergent opportunities and make sure they really fit with what's going on in the story.
That's important. We sort of partially mentioned that a little bit earlier, but yeah, don't work outside of your genre. Don't work outside of the tropes and the themes and the story that you've set down before. If you're playing a gritty game and you have this stuff in your game, these kind of mechanics in your game, do not go lollipops and crazy.
Yeah, don't all of a sudden fucking magic appear or something. Don't magic that up. Yeah.
Do not necessarily have a car come out of nowhere and kill somebody because it suits you when that's not the kind of game that you've been playing.
Yeah, because when you break context, it becomes jarring, right?
Absolutely.
And worse than that, and we'll talk about this in a minute about the problems that this mechanic can cause. The interpretation is already an effort. If somebody disagrees with the interpretation, it's gonna bog things down at the table. Like if you're all of a sudden like, well, a car appears out of nowhere and hits the person, and somebody's like, where was there a car?
Yeah.
Like, we're on this deserted road, or hey, why didn't the sniper see the car coming? Right? Those are...
Now, if you had it set up earlier that there was an ally of yours that had driven away in a car, that's different.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's context.
Yep. What else you got?
Like other emergent and narrative techniques, feel free to farm the table for ideas when trying to resolve the role. Like if you get stuck, ask.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff we're talking about right here is basically improv mechanics. Because this game has emergent qualities.
Correct.
So you need to be proficient in this. You know what we didn't say? I'm just looking at the list. Learn the language of the system.
Yeah.
Like in Star Wars, first of all, you better know what all the symbols are. Like that's on your curve of mechanical mastery, right? Know the symbols, know which symbols cancel out which symbols, right? Because that's also important.
Yeah.
You need to learn the mechanical language of the game you're playing because again, you are learning this tea leaf as a skill.
It's true.
And finally, pick your roles carefully. You don't need a role for every little thing.
Because we're going to talk about in a second
one of the main problems of this mechanic.
Yeah, because it can get a little wearing when you're trying to be constantly creative. So why don't we talk about that right now? What are some of the problems that these kind of games cause? Latency.
So let's redefine that because that's a term we use here on the Misdirected Mark Network quite a bit, but not in a lot of other places. Like other people don't use it as much. Latency is the time from when the narrative stops because you've engaged the resolution mechanic to when the narrative resumes. Okay, so if you remember when we talk about low latency, rolling a d20 and determining whether you hit or miss, that's low latency, right? I rolled the d20. Is it above 15? No, you missed. Low latency. Reading the tea leaf games have a large latency.
Yes, because it's roll, especially, let's talk about the FFG game, because why not? It's a good
Yes.
example of it. Like first you're looking to see if you succeed or fail.
Well, no, first you gotta build the pool.
There's a dice pool thing.
Right? So first of all, well, and it's not like a dice pool like let's contrast it really quick. In Tales from the Loop, which is also a dice pool game, Tales from the Loop has one type of die, D6. The number of dice you roll is equal to your stat plus skill, and then there's like a couple of other things. Like if you're using your item, whatever. Like there's very few other conditions that add to that pool, right? So very quickly, I have 7 dice. I roll dice, right? FFG is not like that, right? FFG is
Here, man, like
your skill is 2 green, 1 yellow.
Yeah, because you have to figure out if you're proficient with a thing.
Well, but a lot of times that's on your character sheet, right?
Yeah.
Like your skill is 2 green, 1 yellow. The GM has to dump in the purple dice
or the red dice.
or the red dice, then has to decide if there's advantage dice or threat dice, and right. So like
boost dice or whatever the
thank
other
you.
one is.
All of this is time, right? All of this is time ticking away in the game.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you have to roll those dice.
Right. Then you have to do the cancellations.
And then you see if you have success or failure.
Yep.
Then you see if what your advantage or disadvantage is. And then you have to interpret your advantage or disadvantage or spend those on some of the mechanical parts of the game.
Right. Like that's a lot of latency, which is actually what makes me impressed. And I've only played a little bit of Star Wars.
And we didn't even mention the Destiny points.
Right, thank you. Because there's actually it's actually a fortune in the middle, right? Because you can spend points after.
No, you spend points before you.
Oh, okay, so it is fortune
upgrade
at the
dice
end.
a lot of time, but you can also spend those points to do other things. Depends on who you're playing with
Okay.
and how they decide to interpret the game.
So this is the latency, right? Like this is the time that we're going. This is a time to determine whether I shot the stormtrooper. All right. All of those steps we just determined is whether or not my blaster bolt hits the stormtrooper.
It's true.
That's a lot.
It doesn't have to be, but I mean, the more proficient you are with the game.
Well, mechanical, like we always say, mechanical mastery lowers latency.
Yeah.
So when you first play this game for the first time, it's going like a gunfight. is going to be a long time.
Yes, it can be.
Right.
There's actually a chart for ranges for how many challenge dice it costs. Like, it's not that hard. Like, short range is like 1.
Yeah.
Or not challenge, I should say difficulty or whatever. Yeah, difficulty dice. 1, 2, and 3 are like short, medium, and long or whatever it is. You know, that's how. I mean, it's not super tricky.
No, but I mean, like, but mechanical mastery will make a difference.
It's true.
Yeah. So, so latency is always going to be a thing with this, and that's why we were saying before, like, pick your rolls carefully.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't make somebody make a roll to open an empty room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
only roll for stuff that matters.
Yeah, don't engage these mechanics for every for every roll because they're slower. Okay. Tell me what the next latency problem is. I'm sorry. Tell me what the next problem with this mechanic can be.
Sometimes you have specialty dice.
Yep.
So many of these systems require specialty dice or decks of cards. I mean, we're also going to throw those in there. Luckily, a lot of these games develop app versions, which helps a lot. Like the FFG Star Wars game has an app.
Uh-huh.
It does all that sort of math for you.
It actually, in some ways, is actually better than the dice.
It is better than the dice, except for the fact that you don't have the tactile sensation. Of
Exactly,
dice
but it actually does all the cleanup for you.
So, I mean, now you have to go get your own set of dice, or there will need to be a communal set.
By the way, let's have an aside here for my lovely co-host on Pandas. When there is a communal set of dice,
do not put your hand in your mouth.
Do not put your hand in the dice. Put your hand in the mouth and put your hand back in the dice.
There's no doing. It's a trap.
That is. I was
just I was fish hooking my mouth.
Yes, she luckily avoided the con crud. I mean, I don't know how she. I think only by the will that she had a child.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. But the thing with communal dice is that if you want to actually talk about other contributing latency factors. Like, if you have one set of dice at the table and 5 players, and those dice have to keep getting, like, shuttled around the table, also slows things down.
It does.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
So, from a game publisher's perspective, this makes it tricky to publish games with this mechanic, because manufacturing dice are expensive and require expertise in overseas manufacturing, first of all.
Yes, as we learned the hard way when Bob made a dice game that we can't produce.
Yeah, because it would be really expensive for us to do and hard.
Yes.
I mean, that's really one of the biggest reasons, right? Like, it's hard to make that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's the reason why Fantasy Flight Games can make stuff like this. Because they have money, they have an audience that will buy this stuff, they can produce it in bulk, and they have an infrastructure to make them cost effective.
Yeah, I mean, they're printing board game mechanics all the time. So for them to go make a set of custom dice in China is no big deal.
Yeah, I mean, and their company is part of whatever the parent company is that owns like 75% of the board game world.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, there's a reason why Encoded Designs isn't making a Read the Tea Leaves dice game.
Yeah, because
let's be honest. We talked to a few people because our board game that Bob developed, Relic Hunters, we love very much, but it requires custom dice.
It does.
And if you want custom dice, not the painted on, because the painted on ones are actually not that
expensive
to get, but they're not that durable.
Correct.
If you want the ones where they're actually in set, laid
carved
into
the die.
Yeah. They're not, because they're not actually carved. It's molding, right? So it's an injection mold process, and you just can't do that here. Like that's done in China.
Yeah,
and you have to create the molds, buy the mold. Like you have to buy the molds. Then you have to buy like a run of dice. Then you have to ship it in a cargo container from China. Like all of those things, and that's all just money.
And that company that Fantasy Flight is a part of is Asmodee.
Yes. So yeah, there's a reason.
Asmodee. That's how you pronounce it. Asmodee.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There's a reason why Fantasy Flight is kicking everyone's ass in this field.
Asmodee's a different game company, actually.
Yeah, it's funny because Avi the Jackal said Asmodeus.
Yeah.
Asmodeus makes a whole different kind of game.
Yeah, it's true. That
the kind where
Prince
you're
of the
like,
Nine Hells.
I was gonna say
Hells.
that would be the Nine Hells Publishing.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. What about online play? Tell me about that.
So online play can actually be a little tricky because
you don't have the dice.
Because maybe it comes down to this: if there isn't an online roller, then you either have to just let people roll dice and interpret them. A thing I'm actually comfortable with, right? Like, I guess my thing about playing online is like, if I'm playing online with you, I just trust you to roll your dice. Like, I don't need to. You don't have to put them up for me. Like, I don't need a roller. So it's not that big of a deal for me. But if you do play where you like to have a roller, you need one that's adapted for this game. Now, luckily, Fantasy Flight Star Wars is so big that Roll20 actually has a Roll20 has a module that you can plug in for it. And I don't know, maybe the Gauntlet has. I don't know if the Gauntlet has their, because they have their roller page now.
Yeah.
I don't know if their roller page does Star Wars yet. But if it doesn't, it may someday. But that can be problematic for people who exclusively play online.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing we didn't mention is specialty dice. Depending on the country you're in, those specialty dice may be easier to get or not.
That's accurate.
Right? Now, luckily, again, Fantasy Flight, because Fantasy Flight is big, right? Think big. Fantasy Flight also put out the app. The app is actually, gettable worldwide.
Yes, it is.
Which actually makes a huge difference for getting people into the game. And actually, the app is cheaper than the dice.
That's true.
The app, I think, is $4.99.
The dice are like 12 to 15.
Right. So if
I know I have a set or two.
Right. So these things can be kind of problematic. It's not a mechanic that's easy for small publishers to get into unless you start getting into cards.
That's true. And even then, like, if you're doing cards that are interpretive, you need art, and that's budget constraining.
Yeah, shit, art.
Yeah. All right. What are some simple hacks or a wish list that we'd like to see for games like this?
Right. I like the idea of a game, and I don't know of a game out there that's doing this, but I would like to see a game that has a mix of simple and complex roles. So whatever the core mechanic of the game is, like whatever the crux of the game is about, that uses the tea leaf mechanic. So let's say it's magic. Okay. So when you cast magic, you do the reading the tea leaves, right? To come up with your spell effect and all that.
Sure.
Okay. But for like opening a door or searching a room, there's like a simpler mechanic, like less robust. I just roll some dice and see if I go.
Yeah, I can buy that.
So it's like Gumshoe, right? Like it's like Gumshoe with the idea that in Gumshoe, the investigative skills and the mechanics for those are separate from the mundane skills.
It's true.
It would be just like that.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, like I think that would be fun for. I think it would be fun to do for a game where you're basically saying like, look, the crux of this game is so cool that we're going to do this like really cool thing around it, but let's acknowledge that doing it everywhere else isn't that much fun, and let's get that shit out of the way with like a 2d6.
That's cool. I love the idea of using tea leaves dice for magic.
Yeah, it's a cool idea.
Mundane stuff gets regular dice, and magic gets the fun.
I mean, it could be fun to do something like your tea leaf dice are how you harvest your mana, and then based on what you roll, like maybe your spells you need certain symbols. So like you roll the tea leaf dice, and then you're like, okay, I was trying to cast fireball, right? So I needed some elemental. I got a couple of I got enough elemental to actually make the fireball, and I have like some other power that I can actually channel up to make the range bigger, the radius bigger, whatever, that kind of thing. Like that could be fun. It'll have latency, right? Because it'll be kind of latent, but it would be kind of neat to have like something like that where maybe you're not going to cast a spell because you couldn't pull together all of the magic, or maybe there's a consequence if you don't have enough of a symbol. You pay for it somewhere, like in your own personal health, something like that, reserves or whatever.
Yeah, I could dig it.
Ooh, that'd be kind of fun. No, we can't think about shit like that because we can't fucking make that game.
Not right now.
No, I mean,
you write it down and you put it away.
Yeah, I mean, look at even Evil. I mean, if we look at tiers of publishers, right? Like Evil Hat is the only other publisher who's making dice, and let's be honest, they're making one type of die. And they own the molds for them from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
They kickstarted the molds for those dice. And even though they keep coming out with...
they're using the same molds.
They're using the same molds.
Yeah.
Here's how you get around that, though.
Huh.
Didn't they just make a generic system based on the Star Wars FFG game?
It's called the Genesis.
Yeah, Genesis.
So you take those dice.
Yes, you could
And just
you
use
could
them.
co-op
Yeah.
Fantasy Flight's dice.
You just use the Genesis system. That's all. Yeah.
Or
you just-
not use their system. Bob's saying just steal their dice
Yeah, you
and their
could do that.
Use
symbols.
the
You can do
dice
that
and then make your system based on
Ah,
those
that's
dice.
good. I like that. That's guerrilla.
Unagi.
That's guerrilla warfare.
Guerrilla Warfare and Publishing. Hilarious.
Yeah, I can't make my own dice. I'm just going to steal Fantasy Flight's dice, and then I'm going to make a different game using their dice. Boy, there's not anything they really can do about
Yeah.
that.
By the way, they're playing Genesis on Sasgeek right now. So
Yeah.
steampunk.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
I might have to listen to that.
What is another hacker wish list thing that you have?
One of the things that I think sometimes comes up in this game is that sometimes, like, if you have something like advantage or disadvantage, like if you get too many of them, like you don't really want to use all of them, right? Like you got let's say you got like some really weird disproportionate roll, and you know like you didn't get any threats, and you got like 4 advantages, right? But like all you were trying to do was hit the stormtrooper, right? Like I know some people house rule it and they'll do like 4 advantages equals like a big thing versus like 4 separate advantages.
So here's the nice. I mean, I see what I know what you're saying. The concept
Yeah.
is solid. The example is weird because usually if you have 4 advantages, whatever your weapon you're wielding has a bunch of abilities that will proc off of having those advantages.
That's cool, right? I like that.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes when you have this mechanic in different games, that if you want to bank or translate those extra bonuses into another commodity, right? So that you're basically lowering the latency by like, well, instead of narrating all this shit, I'll take my success, I'll put 1 advantage, and give me a Benny for the rest of these.
Yeah. Now, so the way that I would just modify that real quick, because I like this idea in games, because I like this idea. I like the idea of inspiration in D&D because you can only have one of them.
Yeah.
Like you can bank some stuff, but then you have this one unit. You can't get any more than that one unit banked, so it makes you want to spend it sooner.
Yeah, well, right, because it pushes that economy.
Yeah, so then you're actually moving the economy. That way you can't save up like 12.
Right, I'm gonna slice this dragon in half right now. Here comes 12 inspiration.
Yeah, 12 advantage, 12 whatevers. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree, and actually that's what you call it, and actually that's kind of cool, right? Like that idea of it's a very finite economy, so it drives hard, and because you are likely to recharge it faster, you will be apt to spend the one that you have.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. Like I think that would work. Oh man, I really like the idea of the simple complex thing. Like
Yeah, it's a good one.
and now stupid Bob had to mention the idea that we could steal Fantasy Flight's dice to do it.
Yeah, I kind of want to write the magic system that goes for that. I like writing
Well,
magic
Genesis
systems.
had. Oh, you mean one that from
Yeah.
outside of the
Yeah.
Genesis? Yeah, right. That'd be fun. That'd be a fun urban fantasy game too.
So is that all we have then?
I'm trying to think.
I think that's
Oh,
it.
you know what? I was going to mention a Tales from the Loop thing along
Okay.
these same lines.
Sure.
So Tales from the Loop is a mystery game. And obviously the roles push towards getting clues. But as we know with mysteries, sometimes it's the assembly of the clues that's more like that becomes the critical part. And sometimes there's not really a role that says like, hey, put these clues in the following order, or hey, maybe you want to go this way instead of that way. So I was actually considering, although it hasn't really come up a lot in our game, like having too many successes, but banking some of those into like a Benny for like almost like an inspiration kind of thing for the GM will point you based on the clues you have. The GM will help you, like give you a hint on how to stick them together, or give you a hint on something like the next place you should go, kind of thing. I'm contemplating it because I've run enough mystery games between Connex and a few other games where even if you've done a good job of dispensing clues, sometimes players lock up. Like they don't just it's always obvious to the GM, right? Because the GM has the whole story, but players are working on imperfect knowledge, and if you're spanning sessions, some of that knowledge has gone stale. And so having some sort of resource that was basically like, so you rolled like 5 successes on your calculate roll and you really only needed 1 to succeed, and you don't, like you got what you needed. You don't actually need those other 4. You can bank them into an inspiration.
Nice.
Or an insight, flash of insight point or something. I don't know. Be something like that. Anyway, that's what I was contemplating.
Makes sense.
I might house rule just to see what happens.
All right, so that's our discussion on reading the tea leaves. I hope you all enjoyed that. If you have any comments on reading the tea leaves, please let us know in our G Plus community.
Absolutely. There's already a thread going, but feel free to
is.
start a clean one if you want to be like I listened to the show and ...
Yeah. All right. Well, let us move on to the chat room. Is there anything going on in there that we have to cover?
Yeah. Jared Rasher said or gave a GMing tip. Almost nothing happens in a perfect closed system, so look for reasons to throw in setback dice, especially since lots of people often have talents to remove them. And I'm thinking that's probably Star Wars FFG.
Yeah,
related.
it is. Yeah. There's a mechanic in the game.
That's a good point, because otherwise...
they don't get to use those powers.
Yeah.
And it tends to trend in one direction.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. And then Rob Abrazato, he threw in MMLL, Mechanical Mastery Lowers Latency.
Mechanical Mastery Lowers Latency.
MMLL is the new WWJD.
I like it.
I want that T-shirt now.
MMLL?
Yeah.
We should make that. You should pin that somewhere.
Yeah, John
Ding.
could make that. That'd be or John could put that up.
MMLL, and then underneath it actually says it in smaller print.
Right. Those are that's a true nerd.
Right?
Like
Yeah.
that's some hardcore nerd on that. I like that.
That's a misdirected Mark shirt if I ever heard
Right.
one. Oh, man. Good job, Rob.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That is it for now.
All right, then I will do this. All right, the social media depository. So, community chatter. So, Doc Palindrome had this to say. So, I know there's been a lot of discussion on player agency on MMP, but what about player agency and world building? In my recent campaign, I've been focusing on the totalitarian Christian-run empire that hosts the X-Crawl that the players participate in.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the players have chosen to come from different parts of the continent. When I was asked what one of those nations had, which at the time had a dumb name and ended up being a placeholder, I encouraged a player to come up with some stuff. I ended up with a 9-page document and some amazing background for this nation, a variation on the Scandinavian areas of our world. It includes how the displaced people from Earth to this area. It includes how the people displaced from Earth to this area centuries ago managed to leverage natural resources and an alliance with a nearby dwarven civilization to build a mutually beneficial community, including a modernization of Norse civilization. This has also led to my accidentally making the most wuxia Hong Kong action... I don't know how to pronounce that word.
Jideki.
Jideki? Sure. Anime, cyberpunk, something I can imagine. So take that for what it's worth. I think listening to a ton of Yang Hu Hustle might have had something to do with that, because that show's really good.
So yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about...
So Fear the Boot's done this. They've talked about this.
About collaborative world building?
Yeah, like Chad doesn't like to do any work, so he just gives different parts of the world to the players and
Right.
says, go write stuff.
Yeah.
So it works.
It absolutely works. There's definitely a trust level, right? When you're
Sure.
on any level of collaboration, there's always a trust that people kind of get like where you're going. I think that there's I think it helps to have a clear understanding of the
Setting?
the setting,
Or
because
the style of play that you're looking
yeah,
for?
because you're going to want to make your thing fit in the overall setting. Now, luckily, the X-Crawl book has some really good. Actually, the X-Crawl book is like 80% setting material. So the setting material is actually really solid. You'd actually like it's an alternate history. It's like an alternate fantasy history
Oh,
US.
that's funny.
But anyway, I think those things go through, and then I think that I think it's a neat idea, right? I always like this on a couple different levels. Like what Doc Palindrome's talking about here is like somebody went off and made 9 pages of a whole continent. But like one of the things I remember is that the Barbarian playbook in Dungeon World there's an XP thing for when you talk about how your civilization is different from the one you're in. And so from time to time, it was actually a question I think you had to ask me each session.
Basically, you have to tell me something unique about your culture.
Right. And so I think in the beginning, there was like a thing where you actually asked the question. And later, Corin would just like spontaneously burst out with these insights about the Axe-Torn Valley, right?
And then, because you became a servant of the Queen of Hoarfrost and Woe, the question became, in the time that you were gone, which was like only a month of time, but was actually 2 years for you.
Yeah.
What was something that you learned in your time with the Queen of Hoarfrost and Woe?
Yes. And it was just these like great moments of just creating additional story content. So I think looping back to this, there are a couple different approaches, right? Like Doc's approach, somebody went off and made a whole continent with a whole history, like 9 pages of detail, and was able to contribute to the world. And then there's a small version of it, which is like hey Chris, in your on the planet you came from, like what do they do? What's the Christmas holiday on your planet? Right? And that just creates a little chunk.
And let me hit a couple other examples. So, like, I know a bunch of people that have used Microscope to build their settings.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know this is exactly what Fate does when they do their game creation.
Dresden did this first,
Dresden
right?
does it for the city, but even Fate Core does it for the game itself.
Absolutely.
And not just all the time the faces and the places, but the themes even.
Oh, the Hood.
The Hood does it too.
The Hood does it, and actually, because Hydra Hackers stole
that from the Hood.
stole it from the Hood. Hydra Hackers does this too. When you create the neighborhood, there is a whole thing where you actually create buildings in the neighborhood and actually put people in them.
By the way, we probably do a whole garage episode on mechanics about setting creation. I don't think we've ever done that. Why don't you put that a pin in that, buddy?
Setting creation?
Yeah.
Collaborative setting creation.
Collaborative setting creation.
So clearly, Chris and I are fans
Yes.
of collaborative, and I'm a fan of this for all the reasons I love collaboration.
Well,
right?
It builds. Well, one, more ideas are always better if you can hone them into something.
Amen.
It builds investment for everybody into the game.
Hallelujah. Preach on.
What's another one? I'm out now.
I don't know. Those are my two big
Those are my
ones.
two big
yeah,
ones,
those
too.
are my two big. Yeah, I mean when we talk about collaboration and shared creation, those are the two big ones, right? Emotional investment and better ideas.
Also, it makes everybody understand what the setting actually is. There's no uncomfortableness or unknowing about what the setting is when you're playing the game.
Right.
Because you all built it together.
Right. Now, there are some pitfalls, right? The pitfalls are that the person comes with 9 pages of something that does not fit.
Yeah, and then you have to be the bad guy and be like, it doesn't work.
Right. So there has to be, there should be an understanding, and it's worth having the discussion before you send somebody off to create a part of the world of, hey, we're going to do this collaborative world building thing, but one of us needs to make sure that all the pieces fit together. That's the GM. And, or it could be like the keeper of the world or something, but it's often going to be the GM. And I'm going to have the final say on whether all of this stuff fits.
Yeah, I mean, that is it's almost like the GM is the project manager and managing the project.
Editor, actually.
The editor.
It's like the editor.
They're the editor. That's a better
Yeah, exactly.
description.
They're going to make the decision on what content stays or what gets changed or what gets dropped.
Ange brought up a good point.
I saw her bring it up. We were in the middle of answering the question.
Yeah,
That's why I
exactly.
didn't bother to say anything.
Oh, did she bring up that
Like,
same
what do
idea?
you do about obnoxious stuff that gets introduced?
Yeah, like
Game Master, you're the editor. You have to have the final say about what is good and what
right.
is
Now,
bad.
players. I'm going to give a tip to the players. Do not write a fucking loophole for yourself into your background.
'cause that's not the point.
Because you're undermining the whole reason of the collaboration. Like, if you're like, well, my continent actually has a super technology of nanites
The
that
goal
like
is not to win the role-playing game. The goal is to create the best possible story with the role-playing game.
Exactly.
There are plenty of games that you can play where it's if you want to see if you survive through the dice rolls.
Those are
not these games.
The people of my world are known throughout the galaxy for being trustworthy, and people just generally trust us on site.
Yeah.
Like, don't fucking do that. Don't write advantages or loopholes into the background. That's the player side.
In fact, don't write anything that could be mechanically construed often into your background.
Exactly.
You should always be writing stuff that is story based into your background.
Yes. Thank you.
I mean, that's what I think anyway.
No, I think you're right. Now, I think there's room for saying, like, if there's like favored feats that go with your people, things like that. But what I'm saying is, yeah, don't try to backdoor yourself something because you're like, well, clearly I'm from this, world and we're all trusted on site. So this guard's of course going to take my word. Like, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't. The GM trusted you to write a part of the world. Return that trust by putting your GM hat on.
Now, if your player, has the best of intentions but just missed the mark,
the editor will take care of that.
The editor can take care of that and work with them to get their ideas, find out what their ideas are that they want in the game, and work that actually in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And a good way if you want to kind of feel out before you hand somebody off a whole continent. to start with the little chunks. Like start with the little pieces and ask them to define, their world's version of, or their country's version of Christmas, or, what do you do for Thanksgiving? Since, those because the ones that have a real knack for it will come up with something like really cool and story based. And the other thing to recognize is that this is not a thing everyone in your group will be interested in doing.
It's true.
There are going to be some people who are going to super nerd out and love it. And there's probably going to be some people who are like, I just really wanted to come here and play the game. Like I don't want to build a world.
Yeah.
It's okay. Good question. Good question.
That was a really good question.
Thank you, Doc.
JJ Lanza brings the chatter. It's chatter time. What is your perfect preferred adventuring party size?
Sweetness.
And to go with that, how many player characters do you prefer in your adventuring parties? Does it change based on genre or RPG?
Yes, and yes.
My preferred is 3 to 4.
That is actually my preferred as well.
And it doesn't really matter what genre.
I like 3 to 4, but I am willing in fantasy to go a little higher if I think that the game demands having certain, like, if the game needs a cleric, I need like a 4th player.
So like I can run D&D pretty easy for 5 or 6. I have a real hard time running Fate for 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And like game is what really throws me off. On player count, like Powered by the Apocalypse games, I'm really good in the 3 to 5 space. I prefer 4. I think the best for Powered by the Apocalypse games. 6 is too many.
I mean, in general, I don't like large tables. Right? I don't like large tables because I lack the interaction time with characters. But games that have lower latency, games that have simpler mechanics, I'm more okay. Playing, like, I could play an Apocalypse World game with 6 players, and I have because I've run Hydra Hackers at 6 people. Mm-hmm. It's a spotlight management thing more than anything else. It's not a mechanical thing.
Yeah.
But Fate, when we're talking about aspects on the table,
oh my God, it's
points, like 3. Like the reason why there's 3 Rocketeers is not because it sounds like 3 Musketeers. It's that PK identified the correct number of players for the game. It's 3.
Well, it's actually 4 because D'Artagnan.
Fuck D'Artagnan.
What?
That obnoxious punk. He gets in because his dad's a legacy. Whatever.
He's also
no one likes that kid.
Excellent swordsman.
They're all excellent swordsmen. He's an excellent swordsman and a jackass, and the rest of them are, no, I'm just kidding. We could. I know I'm shining you on this one. I know you have feels about that. That's great. Look at his face. He wants to launch into a whole thing about it. No, I was just playing with you.
D'Artagnan is the young, inexperienced punk kid, but in Man in the Iron Mask, he is the most excellent, he is the epitome of what a musketeer should be.
In Three Musketeers, he's like a little bit of Luke and Anakin.
I mean, depending on which Three Musketeers movie we're talking about.
Well, all right. So good point. I actually like him better in the Disney Three Musketeers.
Really, I like him better in the other one where he is in the steampunk inspired Three Musketeers.
Oh, that one's crazy. I love that. That movie's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I love that. That movie's nuts.
That movie's fantastic.
Fucking steampunk Three Musketeers.
And you're right, that kid D'Artagnan in that one's such a jackass, but he is like, he just brims with confidence. Everywhere he goes and struts, he just knows he's better than everybody else. It's hilarious.
I mean, I love the Disney, if we're going to diverge for a second and talk about Three Musketeers, the Disney Three Musketeers is my all-time favorite.
Yeah.
I mean, Tim Curry as the Count, and I mean, and who is it that plays what's his face with the eye patch?
I know who you're talking about, but I don't know his name offhand.
Yeah, the one all in black. Somebody's gonna catch up. But I love the casting of all the Musketeers, right? Like I mean,
yeah. Kiefer Sutherland.
What's his face as Porthos?
Oliver Platt.
Oliver Platt's Porthos is fantastic.
Yep. And Charlie Sheen, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And if you can get over, isn't that am I right? Is there a stupid Bryan Adams song in that movie?
Yep.
Yeah, if we can just get over that, like that may be the only flaw in the whole movie.
I don't really think about that.
Yeah.
It's still the sword fighting is not nearly what the sword fighting is in the other.
Oh my God, that storm! Go ahead. First of all,
the guy who plays Rochefort is Michael Wincott.
Of course, it's like a smelly cheese.
Yeah, Michael Wincott is his name, and he was also the bad guy in The Crow.
Yes.
So
yeah. The steampunk one, the cinematography on the fight scenes.
So
that fight scene they get into in the square with the Cardinals guards.
Yeah.
That fight scene's sick.
I know, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's really good.
Way better than the fight scene in the Disney movie.
The Disney movie, let's remember the Disney movie's what, 1992?
Yeah, it's true.
That's 1992
It's,
tech.
1993.
93. That's not bad for 93. The one you're thinking about was like a 2003.
Yeah. You know, some people in the chat room are talking about the Musketeers show from the BBC, which I've only watched the first 4 episodes of.
Yeah, I
Yes,
heard
I've
it was
only.
pretty
good.
Yeah. I heard that one's actually like really.
Well, we completely diverged off the question. That
Oh, well, so let's rally back. How many players? You and I are pretty close, right? I like three. I like
3 to 4.
Yeah, 3 to 4 is my favorite. Things like DCC, I would go up in number. Like especially low level DCC. Low level DCC is like super deadly.
Mm-hmm.
So having like 5 people at the table is wouldn't be a problem because it's like, well, you're gonna need it.
Yeah, I mean, I actually really like 5 for my D&D games.
Yeah, 5 for D&D is a good number.
For some reason, that really works for me because I play with a lot of individual story type beats with that game too. So like 5 gives me a lot of time to, because usually when I'm playing D&D, when I'm actually playing D&D sessions with people who are competent with the game and know what's kind of going on, like we play like 4-hour sessions.
Right.
Which is like, people are like 4-hour sessions are a normal thing. I'm like, not really. I usually play 2 to 3 hour sessions these days.
Yeah, I do too. Where's your feeling on the Sean Patrick Fannin 26 people session?
I can run a table for like 12 people, but it's not really fun.
Oh, it's a
I mean,
lot.
because it's fine for me as a game master, I guess, but I always feel like I'm not doing.
I don't feel like I can cover enough.
The game isn't fun. Like, it's not fun. It's not fun for me because I'm not getting to interact with everybody. It's not fun for me because I'm not really getting any like.
Oh, you're not getting any spotlight time.
Spotlight time for characters. So there's not really any story that can truly come out in a lot
Yeah.
of ways that isn't my story that I'm sort of pushing at the table.
I think it's. I mean, I have played in a couple of them and they're pretty crazy, but there's a lot of downtime, right? Like you're sitting waiting for your turn. Like for your turn to come back around is enormous.
Who cares? Like, who cares? I don't show up to a game, to play a game, where I only get to actually play for 30 minutes and watch for 3.5 hours, right? Like,
Right.
That's not anything I'm interested in as a player, which is,
Yep.
I think, is completely fair. Like, half the fun of role-playing games, like, is being able to interact and be part of it. Now, I know there's a ton of people who like to watch role-playing games, and that's fine too. Like, every once in a while, I like to flip on an actual play or watch some actual play too. But really, when it comes to playing the game, I prefer to not be at a table with 12 people.
So now let me ask you another question. How few people will you play a role-playing game with?
Oh, I'll play with one.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've done it a few times.
You've done one-on-one, yeah?
Uh-huh.
I mean, I wrote a one-on-one.
I know, I've run that, and I've played other one-on-one or one-on-two games before.
Yeah, I mean, in a normal game, it's certain games I think don't hold up at like single player, like investigation games. So like Night's Black Agents isn't one that you can afford to lose too many people.
So here's the actual true trick to playing one-on-one games, at least for me, when I run them. There's always an NPC in most every scene to go with the person who's the one-on-one.
To kind of fill in along the way.
Yeah, because
that's a good idea.
Because okay, I like to read the Dresden Files, and I actually like to read a lot of modern fantasy, and oftentimes
They're one character.
it's that character's point of view, and
Yeah.
they will rotate in and out with different characters. I'm like, this is not a role-playing game.
Right.
Because it's not everybody else getting their actual spotlight time, right? It's just a story.
Yeah, this
which
is a
then-
story about Harry Dresden
Uh-huh.
doing
Yeah.
shit.
And after reading these books a billion times at this point, and that's a fictional number, obviously, but like one of the nice little formulas that Butcher's got going on is that while it's all from Harry's perspective and it's Harry's story and we get his point of view, there are usually another character story going on in the background or 2 character stories going on in the background that we don't see all the bits, but we can kind of put them all together. So technically, you could play those as role-playing games with groups, but you're just jumping between different players. But
Yeah.
I guess that happened. Like, that is a style of play that exists. Like, I suppose Vampire the Masquerade works that way, where you are going to spotlight different characters in different scenes. While other players are going to
play a game where everybody takes turns playing Harry, and then other people play the background.
And then that'd be cool. That actually would work.
That would work for your pulp game, by the way.
Yeah, it really would.
Everybody plays the pulp hero.
But other people play the secondary characters.
Yeah.
Like, rotate it around. Oh, that'd be interesting.
There you
That'd
go.
be
Sorry.
Fascinating.
Sorry to dump that in your head.
With fancy Genesis dice.
No, I mean, if I'm going to
Let's not get crazy on it.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I'll do it with one. No problem. But that's how I would do it. Like, 'cause I like playing NPCs. Like, as soon as as a game master, I can put an NPC in a scene that I can play.
Yeah.
That can just chat with the characters. It usually goes better for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's our Dungeon World game on Monday night. Remember, we got that cleric. There's that cleric now. I play that. I constantly am playing that cleric. He's kind of a drunk.
Yep.
Lost his faith a little bit.
Kind of a drunk.
Yeah, he's got a story. Like, you don't know his story. Like, what?
Oh,
why
he's
he
definitely
drinks
got a
so
story.
much. But yeah, like that is a thing that I love to do. It's a trick that I use.
Yeah, I mean, I've GMPC'd before, right? Like to fill in a small party.
But it doesn't have to be GMPCing. Like, they asked that character to come, so I am playing that character
Yeah.
as like a GMPC. But it's really just an NPC. I don't care if he dies, right? Like,
Sure.
whatever.
No stake in the game on it.
But when you when you're always going to know that there's going to be an NPC that kind of goes around with the main character often, or an NPC that's going to be in every scene, then you are always getting to do that interaction thing. So, I mean, in the fight heavy games, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah, I think I think anything that has super hard niches or requirements for niches, like if you remember, like 3.5 was written with a default party assumption.
Correct.
And if you did not have the default party,
Well, then you couldn't use the rules in the book to
yeah, you had
craft
to
adventures.
start rolling your own.
Also, into like one-on-one dungeon delving is hard.
Yeah, it is.
Now, like, fortunately, the legacy weapon and Dungeon World itself as a rule set handles some of that problem.
Yeah, Dungeon World as a rule set is pretty friendly because the basic moves will cover a lot of shit you have to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, the legacy weapon I wrote specifically so that you actually get the moves of a party without having to be a party.
You can get more moves. You can get moves of other classes, so therefore eventually you can have the moves of a
Right,
party.
and it comes, that it's mechanically wrapped up with a cost, a fun cost.
I gotta read this from Jared Rasher. Jared said, we had a Marvel superheroes game that was Marvel Team Up starring Punisher, where one person always played the Punisher.
No, nice.
Oh man,
Angela said that it has nothing to do with missing roles. I respectfully disagree with that. I think certain game styles require you to have certain roles.
I think finish reading what she said there because
It's
for
about not
her-
having enough people to play. And that's nothing to do. It has with for her for not having enough people to play off of. Now I can get that for her as an individual, but like certain games do not play well one-on-one. Like BX doesn't play well one-on-one.
no, because you don't have enough of anything.
Yeah, exactly. The way that game is meant to be played.
Right, Dungeon World would be disastrous playing 1-on-1.
Oh, I mean, is it
Dungeon World would be literally how long will you live?
true? But like we watched Discern Realities play Dungeon World one-on-one.
I'm sorry, did I say Dungeon World?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I meant DCC.
DCC. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
much
no,
better.
DCC is literally like
Yeah,
how long will
DCC
you
better.
survive? Let's begin the clock. No, I'm sorry, Dungeon World. Dungeon World, of course, you could play 1-on-1. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean,
I think 1-on-1 is, just because we're wandering into this, 1-on-1's harder because, not harder. 1-on-1, I don't think you have to play as long
it's true.
because you actually rack up all that spotlight time.
Yeah.
Very
you
quick.
get a really satisfying game in like an hour and a half. playing
Exactly.
one-on-one. Bob, would you put a pin in one-on-one games?
One-on-one games.
Ooh.
Ding.
High intensity 2-player LARPs.
Maybe we'll call Jeff Stormer and get some commentary from him.
Oh, wouldn't that be a blast?
Right?
Yeah. Dapper guy, too. Dressed up for Fancy Friday at Metatopia.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something about... Can I just tell you a real quick aside about Metatopia? So
Sure.
Fancy Friday was a thing where people got dressed up on
Is that where
Fridays.
those lapels came from?
I wore my suit. I think everyone looked pretty fancy.
You mean Jim McClure's
No, his epaulets? No,
Yeah,
he was just
epaulets.
wearing
That's
shirts.
what I meant. Okay.
No, all of us looked good. And then D'Amato comes in
Uh-huh.
in a suit. D'Amato looks like International Man of Mystery when he comes walking in. I was like,
That's about right.
all right, we've all been bested. Like, D'Amato looks better than all of us in a suit. Like, we can all just go
everybody
back
go
and
home.
Everybody go home. Put your t-shirts back on. Like, it's done.
That's funny.
Yeah,
All right. Well, that's that. That's our show.
that was fun.
You know, let's do some Patreon shoutouts now before we get out of here.
Yay.
So, Noah Bunn, Blake Ryan Batman, Jason Petray or Pitt, Rob Bush, Remy Bilodeau, Stacy Winters, Todd Crapper, The Warden, Blaze Aber, David Walker, V, Wicksburg, the Knights of the Night Crew, Austin Lemke, Glenn Seiler, and Secret Weapon of the Show, Drew Smith, who was on Down with D&D that came out.
Secret weapon
yesterday.
of another show, apparently.
Yeah. He even called himself the Secret Weapon. It was great.
It's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for being our patrons. We greatly appreciate it. Is there anything in the chat room, or are we going to go out of here?
I think we are good.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, so much for listening.
If you are free, Tuesday evenings, 8:45 p.m. Eastern, 6:45 p.m. the Queen's time, you're welcome. Come join us live on Twitch, where you can hang in the chat room with the other listeners in the ever-awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
Yeah, if you cannot make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts. And take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Threats from Gallifrey, Vanished Insight, Pandas Talking Games, Cypher Speak with Darcy and Troy, the Gnome Cast, the Wednesday Evening Podcast All-Stars, and Hobbs and Friends of the OSR.
Weren't we going to give Bob a chunk of this?
We were. I just didn't do it this week.
All right, do the one after me.
You can and should also check out some of our brother and sister podcasts. She's a Super Geek, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
After you have drank all your tea and read all of your tea leaves, you can leave us some feedback. You can reach us on the archaic emails directly by emailing Chris@misdirectedmark.com.
That's me.
Phil at misdirectedmark.com. That's me. Bob at misdirectedmark.com.
He's over there.
Yeah.
Check out our Facebook group.
Yep.
Hit us up on Twitter. The show and the network are at Misdirected Mark.
Woo.
I'm at DNA Phil. Baldy over here is at Robert M. Everson. And as always, slinging the best jazz possible, The Light 101.
Woo.
And don't forget, if you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MMP. Patrons get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Panda Talking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
Mm-hmm. And I think we missed it. If you want to go to the absolute perfect place to read tea leaves and get the lowdown on what's coming up in the future, go to our G Plus community.
Oh, shit. I did forget our G Plus community.
You were wondering where I was going with that, weren't you?
I was wondering. I'm like, where?
To figure out the future of what's going on with gaming. Well, with that, this has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs, a mic drop.
We out!